Did you just happen to be one of the people that completely gave up on Need for Speed Unbound and left it at the wayside? Well, the developers have said that there is more in store and it might not be worth throwing this game out yet. Also, just in case you're wondering, the gameplay you're hearing in the background is not from Unbound, it's actually from Hot Pursuit 2010, and the Unbound gameplay that you're watching is actually from a trailer that was actually one of the earlier trailers for the game, because I wanted to make sure y'all were, I don't know, kind of in the headspace of thinking about Need for Speed Unbound, but I didn't fully want to go through the process of reinstalling it just for the sake of one video. And some of y'all might be like, well, wait a second. That's like super lazy. You should have gone through the process to reinstall the game. However, on the other side of that, I honestly, I played through maybe half of Unbound, and then I just kind of stopped. And I think a lot of people also had that experience, because I remember when Need for Speed Unbound was kind of being led up to, sort of in the news release cycle and all of that stuff. And then once the game came out, there was almost no one interested in it anymore. And of course, depending on what type of following you might be a part of, or depending on what type of channel you have, you may have had differing experiences from that. But I remember doing some coverage of Need for Speed Unbound before the game released, and those videos were generally well interacted with. And then once the game actually came out, people seemed almost immediately disinterested in watching anything related to the game. They were literally like, oh, we don't want this. Why do you think we would want to see this? We don't want this. And I also remember most of the content that I saw related to Need for Speed Unbound was more so people making fun of the game, or essentially just making bait content, because, bait content seems to do really well in regards to Need for Speed, because Need for Speed has a lot of angry fans. And unfortunately, I do believe that Need for Speed will probably always struggle with the fact that the majority of its fan base will always be split on certain issues regarding the game and regarding its either direction or gameplay, or all of these different elements, that you have one group of people that believes it should always be this way, and then another group of people that believes it should always be this way, and then another group of people that is like, well, you're both wrong and you're both stupid and you're both ruining the series. And so I think the series always finds itself in a place where it's not that it's always at odds with its fan base, but there are parts of its fan base that I think it doesn't have any option but to be at odds with, if that makes any sense at all. However, before I go on much further about that, let's talk about this roadmap so we can actually dive into some of the specifics, because I'm really excited to talk about this, and I actually kind of got excited about Unbound again for the very first time in quite a while. So let's dive into some of the specifics here regarding the roadmap. And obviously up first, you have head-to-head with Audi. Now, head-to-head with Audi is cool, but it's not necessarily what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the next part, which is drift and drag, inspired by Need for Speed Underground. And I definitely have a lot of excitement around this, but I also have a lot of apprehension, because I feel like, I feel like it's really easy to get excited about things like, honestly, anything that has the little tagline, oh, inspired by Need for Speed Underground. However, you have to be really careful. And the reason I say you have to be really careful is because we still don't know if this is kind of an attempt to go after the nostalgia, or if it's something more along the lines of, oh, we're actually taking something that's properly inspired by the Need for Speed Underground games and then actually implementing it into Unbound in a really meaningful way. And that, of course, takes me right back to what I was saying earlier about how I still don't know whether or not it's actually worth going through the time and effort to reinstall Unbound and sort of get the ball rolling again with that game, because at least for my community here on my channel, I was never really able to find the Need for Speed Unbound sort of community. A lot of the viewers on my channel actually told me to stop playing the game, stop posting the game, and honestly pretty much said, we don't want to see this. So obviously when your viewer base tells you they don't want to see something, you kind of tend to normally listen to that unless it's something you're super, super passionate about. And as y'all know, I've always been passionate about the Need for Speed series. I started playing this series way back on the original Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, which was released in 1998, which I don't know how many times I've mentioned that on this channel, but it's a lot. And I'm sure people are probably gonna start calling me old at a certain point, because at a certain point it's like, yeah, if you're relating an experience of playing a series, or rather starting at a time frame or in a time frame, for whatever reason I can't English right now. Normally I would cut that out, but I think I'm just gonna leave it and just continue along. But essentially, what I'm trying to get at here is I don't know if these updates are going to be enough. And I also don't know if the people that left the series during the release of Unbound are going to make their way back. And I really think a lot of it comes back to Need for Speed's ever ongoing clash with identity in terms of what the Need for Speed series wants to be, as opposed to what a lot of different parts of the Need for Speed fan base want the series to be. Because let's not forget, a lot of people in the Need for Speed sort of, I would almost call it a fandom at this point, because it's so broad and so vast. But there are always going to be people in the Need for Speed fan base and in that fandom overall that are always going to be mad about wherever the game is headed. Because let's not forget, some people's definition of Need for Speed is something like Hot Pursuit, for example. And there's also other people whose definition of Need for Speed is something like Underground 1 or Underground 2. And then there's other people whose definition of Need for Speed is Most Wanted 05. And when you find yourself in a position, really as a series, where so many different segments of your player base kind of all think that they're correct, they all think they're right, they all think that their favorite game was the best one, and so therefore you're never going to be able to make them all happy at the same time. And I worry sometimes that a lot of these nostalgia-based updates are trying to reel back in some of the fans that may have left the series, because let's just say Need for Speed Unbound, for example, was, I don't know, like not enough like their favorite. But y'all can also feel free to tell me any of your thoughts and opinions on this in those comments down below, because I really want to know how y'all feel about all of this stuff, and also how y'all are feeling about continuing on with Need for Speed Unbound, because a lot of people thought that that game was just going to die off in terms of developer support, and there was a lot of people that were like, oh, I just hated the game, so it might as well just die off anyway. And while I do think that's a really negative outlook to have towards any game, really any game that you have that outlook towards is never going to live up to the pedestal that you put it on. Because obviously if you go back and play, say for example, Underground 1, you know, it's not necessarily going to hit the same. I mean, obviously, sure, you're going to have a lot of fun gameplay elements, but it's not going to stack up to a lot of other modern racing games in the same way, like if you compared it on the same plane. Now, sure, a lot of people will probably just be mad that I even considered comparing Need for Speed Underground to any of the other modern racing games, because they'll just say it's automatically better. But I still kind of disagree with that, because, I mean, sure, were these games incredible in their time? Were they generationally shaping for racing games? Yeah, absolutely they were. But were they perfect? No, absolutely not. But with all of that being said and done, I want y'all to let me know in the comments down below how you're feeling about all of these different updates, and also, honestly, how they make you feel as a fan of the series and as a fan, hopefully, continuing forward. Do they make Need for Speed Unbound worth reinstalling? Do they not make it worth reinstalling? Is Need for Speed Unbound just completely dead still in your own eyes? Let me know in the comments down below. But that is going to do it for this one, y'all. And if you want to see more videos and discussions like this one, once again, you can, of course, hit that subscribe button and turn those notifications on. And I will see y'all next time.